And now it's over to him. Hello. Goodbye. Well, that's the end of the opening ring. And now, here's some words of wisdom from me as somebody else. I see they've brought back that dreadful Everett twit again.
He was a rascal. He was a daredevil. He had some daring-do. He was a rabble-rouser, a rapscallion. He was rambunctious. All things done in the best possible taste.
He was the best operator on British television. That there's no doubt. I mean, he was as significant then on stage of races today.
Terrifying. You never knew what he was going to do with you.
It was fun because he was trustworthy. In as much as the worst that's going to happen to you is you're going to make a right arse of yourself. And anyway, that's going to happen. You can pretty much put the pot on for that. It all started with a tin of peas, Doctor.
Genius. That's my favourite bit, you know. Ahead of his time.
There is a tunnel in the studio.
Absolute one-off.
He was always, in many ways, a giant 6-year-old with a beard.
Trevor spots have gone. Thanks to Angela.
Rent an imp. He was an imp.
Hi. Having trouble parking?
I mean, he was the most extraordinary, irrepressible little guy.
He was 100% totally likeable. He had his own climate. He was his own ecosystem.
Let's talk about those famous BGT now.
People would just look at Kenny, and it would be as if he'd licensed them to laugh.
Sorry about that, sir. Just had to do the opening.
Well, get on with it.
Here's the first sketch. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. Can I have a roll on the drums, please? Yes, it's the
Kenny Everett Show.
When the Kenny Everett Show was first broadcast on ITV 30 years ago, it blew away everything else on television at the time. His was an outrageous, dangerous, even subversive comedy that attracted vast audiences of all ages.
BBC, bleeding Bolshevik cameras.
He's an anarchic performer. He's very naughty, and there's something disruptive about Kenny Everett's energy.
I think Kenny just had this wonderful sense of basically you're talking to a man who doesn't give a toss. Because he really didn't.
If you are looking for a show that you ain't seen the likes of yet.
My own family often gather round to watch television, as they are at this moment.
So, you've decided to become a BG.
He is on his own. He is one of a kind.
You're only one, and there should be 3.
There is no 2 Kenny Everetts. There's no 3. There's only one. Well, there's 3 Kenny Everetts when he impersonates others, of course.
Yes, you've guessed it. It's the world-famous Bee Gees.
You know, he's doing really clever split-screen stuff.
Long hair, shirt open to the navel, revealing hairy chest and medallion look.
And he'll talk to himself. Now, that takes brilliant timing. Really perfect timing to do that.
You poo-poo the less-than-masculine slur, do you, Barry?
Well, you can't tell by the way I use my walk on a woman's man.
Hello. Enough of this technical trickery.
I like to play on the record machine, all the popular...
But Kenny's story is not just about TV. He made his name as a radio DJ.
I've never met anybody else like that from the broadcasting side who was as big in rock and roll and stuff as the rock and roll stars.
Okay, Kenny, what are you doing?
Well, at the moment, I'm having a daily show come on soon.
Really?
Yeah.
So they haven't sacked you?
Oh, he was obsessed with John Lennon. I think the first time I met him, he told me he fancied John Lennon.
Hello. Welcome to my humble little chemist shop.
Apparently he was gay.
What can I get you? Excited?
You can't tell, can you?
Behind the laughter, Kenny struggled with his inner demons. He hid his homosexuality behind the mask of a marriage that lasted for 14 years.
You're going to be gay, you're going to stand alone a lot of the time. You know, and I found that in him. He was a very tender, bird-like, thin, little, wispy little man, you know. He wasn't strong. You think he would break in a strong wind, you know.
And here he is, the star of our show.
The story of Kenny Everett is one of love and self-loathing, royalty and rebellion, mayhem and miscalculations. It was never, ever dull.
The only thing he really hated was boredom. If the boat wasn't rocking, he'd rock it.
Kenny would say that God had created this planet Earth, and it was like a huge banquet. So he'd say you have to try everything and do everything.
He arrived as a fully fashioned rebel, did his rebellious work and buggered off.
You're a bit of a smooth talker, I must say.
Now it is time for a break, so let's break. Commercial time.
Okay, time for part 2. Come on, get back in the room. Didn't take that long to make tea.
And by the way, if you're going out, don't despair. Here's a condensed version of tonight's show. Wasn't that great?
The first Kenny Everett TV show was launched on an
The director doesn't know I'm going to do this. Come with me. Over here. Over here.
No, we didn't think we were groundbreaking, and Ev never made any claim to that I ever knew of. We were just enjoying ourselves.
And now, over to our Scottish... It's impossible.
I can remember when they used to keep the bits where he went wrong in. As they've just left that in. How come they've left that in? Do they know we've seen that?
And now, over to Osh. Can you say it for me, Ray? Here's Ray, our scriptwriter, to say...
And now over to our Scottish studios.
In spite of an overall impression of uninterrupted mayhem, the show was carefully choreographed around Kenny's natural comic energy
Give me a sensible camera.
by writers Barry Cryer and Ray Cameron.
The three of them worked terribly, terribly well together. They were just fantastic, and it was like they had a naughty secret little gang nearly, and it was always huddled as if they're about to do something really naughty.
We'd like to present you with a bottle of cheap Japanese champagne and a custard pie.
It was a really good chemistry, and so yeah, my dad and Barry wrote the show. It was a weekly thing, really. There was not a lot of preparation. It was just what's funny this week, throwing around ideas, and I think that's how the best stuff can come about.
Comedians have a preconceived idea of what they do, and they can read a script and say, that's funny, but it's not me. And Ev would have a go at anything.
Cameron or Cryer would just say, I've got this rough idea. You know the one where we go to the door? I go to his door and we reverse. That haunts me.
Yes? What? What do you mean, yes?
Well, what do you want?
What do you mean, what do I want? What do you want?
I don't want anything. It's you who opened the door.
I know that, but what are you doing there?
Listen, pal, what do you want? I haven't got all day.
I don't want anything.
Well, why don't you clear off then before I call a constable? Go on, on your bike. I think about that years and years later. Yes!
This show is so zappy, we hope it makes you happy. It's zany and it's wacky, now here's another bit.
Ready, steady, disco!
The show quickly gained an impressive reputation for being both groundbreaking and naughty, with dance group Hot Gossip grabbing their share of the headlines.
Hot Gossip got us big exposure and national press and everything. This show is sheer pornography.
I can remember, though, being a bit puzzled when Hot Gossip came on. I just thought, has it finished, Kenny Everett?
You just stop the sketches, and then suddenly you've got these semi-naked women just throwing themselves around. And on the day I went there, they were dressed half as nuns and half in suspenders. Well, what do you do with that at 6 years old?
What size?
Nobody encapsulated the naughty side of the show more than Cleo Ruckus, who joined as a teenager in 1981.
Here we are.
She quickly became Kenny's friend and muse.
What do you think of these?
I think they're fantastic.
They're all right.
I mean, I loved him, but, you know, there were elements of Cleo that I loved more.
My God, they are. Yes, thank you. I think those are two things, points.
She was instrumental in my sexual awakening.
I remember sort of looking at her and not sort of understanding the warm tingle that I'd feel, a bit like going over a humpback bridge as a child. I felt a feeling! Cleo Rockers!
Haven't you ever seen a pair of knockers before?
His humour was mischievous and, you know, naughty playground. Sometimes, you know, sort of loo jokes and things, but they were always, you know, in a sort of cartoony way.
Don't worry, I will be on soon.
As the show continued to evolve, the naughty bits began to play second fiddle to Kenny and his expanding portfolio of outrageous characters.
Hello, you degenerate poofs! Angry of Mayfair here! Do you hear me? Bob the Buster! No, it's the lovely Marcel Webb. But there is a camel in the studio.
I was always a great admirer of Sid Snot, personally. I felt there was a lot of me in Sid.
Funny looking geezer, isn't he?
Don't say anything, does he? Didn't he draw a lady once? And he felt it's and then it went
The exotically named Cupid stunt.
It's all done in the best possible day.
The bearded drag, long before Little Britain, if I may say.
When you're watching it, you think, he's going to do that leg crossing in a minute, he's going to do the thing in a minute, and the tension sort of feels, oh, here it comes, he can't resist the leg crossing, all in the best possible taste! Oh, he's done it! He's moved his legs! God bless you!
Michael, where do you hear those stories?
I had nightmares about saying the name. Even now, I have to think which goes first. Cupid.
Michael.
I thought, he's making a statement here. He's making a comment about my interviewing style.
Yes, Michael, that's right.
But then I grew to love it because it worked. It was funny.
Believe me, Michael, it was all done in the best possible day.
I did even fancy him a bit when he was being Cupid's stunt. I used to think, all right, he's got a beard, but that's a hell of a cleavage.
Boys keep swinging, boys always working out.
Kenny's show quickly established itself as must-see TV, and the biggest stars of the day were queuing up to be humiliated on the programme.
Look at you, lily-livered mincer. Ladies and gentlemen, Freddie Mercury!
He's not very butch, is he?
Thanks, Cliff.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move right along in the show.
I haven't finished, Ken.
Yes, you have.
Oh,
Yes.
listen, mate, there's more to the song.
Listen, we've got big, big superstars coming on. Big. Big. And now over to you.
Have you started yet?
Once it became the done thing to go on the Everett show, that's good. Then the door opens and suddenly you're getting everybody you want.
This is a star and 3/4. Ladies and gentlemen, that famous bum on legs, Rod Stewart. Hello, Rod.
Hi, Tony.
He said, the man's amazing. He said, I just wanted to do it. I wanted to join in the gang.
So I'm supposed to actually look as if I didn't know that was actually going to happen, you know. 'Cause, I'm supposed to...
If you want to be on his show, you had to be able to laugh at yourself. So it was fun. Just hanging out with your best friends because you trusted that they were going to make a fool of you, but it didn't matter.
He's a nobody. You're somebody.
It's not nobody. He's in charge of everybody.
Got myself a crying off. I don't know if you remember, there was one show where he said,
I've used it before, you know, I've said, well, we're going to leave you at a cliffhanger. He said, well, you're here today. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's he going to do?
As ever, we leave you with a cliffhanger.
He would take me aside and say, now look, you don't have to do this, but oh, we love it if you'd let us hang you on television, you know.
And here he is, the one and only Billy Connolly! Billy!
I felt terribly brave, you know, doing that stuff. I felt really edgy.
Yorkshire TV are judging the
Whenever Billy was going to come and do the show, Kenny really lit up.
I never wear a bra.
You don't? You amaze me, Grace. Why ever not?
I'm a man.
Billy's a huge giggler, and they only had to look at each other and they'd fall about laughing.
Sugar?
And holding that chain and speaking in that terrible accent. What are you, Italian or something? You get your junkies coming down here shooting and sniffing and popping. You are in.
The sketch as written was supposed to be about 3 minutes. It ran for about 7.
They would laugh and laugh and laugh for hours and couldn't really get anything else ever done on the same day because they just set each other off.
Mr. Carruthers, what's it like having been a men's room attendant for 50 years?
And I just laugh, and I nearly spoiled all these sketches by laughing. I'm completely undisciplined, you know. I've had no training. But luckily, he came from another department as well. He was undisciplined, you know. He wouldn't rehearse and wouldn't learn stuff.
It's the new single by Electric Light Orchestra. It's called... What's it called?
Perhaps the most unlikely member of the Everett gang was Princess Diana. She was a regular visitor to Kenny's Kensington apartment.
As soon as Diana got into anywhere, she'd kick off her shoes. She loved kicking off her shoes. And she just wanted to relax and be, you know, normal.
Kenny proved to be a discreet and distracting playmate. And he and Diana had many interests in common.
Both Kenny and Diana loved dusting. They loved footling with dusters and cleaning, and it's never been a passion of mine, I can say. So, but just to watch them rushing around, and Kenny had a collection of dusters at the time, you know, feathered things that looked like Las Vegas dancers, and he and Diana were running around dusting things and in the kitchen.
And, of course, plain flour is the absolutely essential ingredient. Then you need lots of pots and pans and plastic things and a thing of sugar.
It was just a lot of fun to see them both so similar, have such an understanding.
The greatest strength that Kenny had is that everybody liked him. You know, I mean, he was impossible to dislike.
He said something to me which has always stayed with me about, do you know what makes a star? And I said, no. He said, if you look at somebody on television and, you know, they're new, and you think, I'd like to have a cup of tea with you. He said, that's what makes a star. And without realizing it, he was describing himself in a way, because everyone wanted to have a cup of tea with Kenny.
So now it's time for a bit of liquid refreshment. Why not join me in a cup of tea?
But Kenny's enduring likability was put under severe pressure in 1983, when an incidental but ill-fated excursion into politics backfired.
Let's bomb Russia! A bit of searing political satire done with impeccable bad taste. And talking about taste... No sugar!
And now...
Hello. No rest for the wonderful.
The 1980s saw Kenny Everett at the peak of his powers.
One average listener says,
There is nothing like it.
You think this is me here?
And it's not. That's me up there.
I hate you, RJ.
Hate you. Have a nice day, spam.
Do you think these boots are too much?
Nothing, it seemed, could undermine his position as lovable, cuddly Ken. Until an ill-judged moment of madness at a Young Conservatives rally in 1983.
Let's bomb Russia!
Kenny had overstepped the mark. He was lambasted for being tasteless, inappropriate, contemptuous.
He immediately knew it was a hugely wrong thing to do for the kind of attention he hates.
He was an apolitical animal, really. And he was pretty anti-Thatcher, I have to say.
He did phone me and he said, "Lee, Margaret Thatcher's having to defend me on the news."
I had to go to the Labour Party in Fulham to a meeting and cover him and say, look, stop this nonsense. They were like saying he was deeply offensive to Michael. And I say, it wasn't. He's a nutter. He's a guy with big, silly hands. It isn't real. It's a dafty. He's a silly man.
Hello. When I grow up, I'm going to be Kenny Everett. Pathetic, isn't it?
Royal Liver Building.
Kenny was born in Liverpool on Christmas Day, 1944.
I was christened Morris Cole, which is a very odd thing to call a child, especially in Liverpool. I always thought that Liverpool was a bit grey. Even when I first came out, of my mum, I thought, oh heck, this isn't very nice.
Liverpool possesses a fine city centre with imposing buildings.
Kenny never looked back at his childhood in Liverpool with any real affection. But his strict Catholic upbringing was undoubtedly the springboard for the future rebel of the airwaves. In 1956, at the age of 12, already an altar boy and choir boy at his local church, he was enrolled in a Yorkshire seminary.
He genuinely believed he had a calling. I said, come on, don't give me that. He said, I did. I felt as if God was, how did it feel, man? You know, did you hear voices? They'll say, come on, be a priest.
But his calling was cut short when he and his friends were caught in the vestry, consuming the communion bread and wine.
He said, we got very hungry one night, the food was terrible, and they broke in and there was the communion wine and the wafers. We ate our Lord.
A letter was sent to his parents in the school holidays, stating that Morris was not proving to be missionary material, and they would not be expecting him back.
His first sacking, yeah. There again, you see, so early on. Rebelling against the authority, I suppose.
I think the calling was actually rock and roll, saying, come on, Kenny boy, you're not meant for this world. There's a better one waiting for you.
So when you're not feeling off, you know.
Kenny followed his second calling. By his early 20s, he had managed to establish himself as a groundbreaking and hugely popular radio personality, before becoming a founder member of Radio 1 in 1967.
He totally broke the mold in radio. I mean, you were listening to something entirely different. It was as if it was coming from another planet. This wonderful collection of voices.
He is easily the greatest radio presenter of my lifetime. I just think he is head and shoulders, little head and little shoulders, but miles above everybody else.
In the early 70s, Kate Adie was a young radio producer who witnessed the genius of Kenny Everett firsthand.
And welcome.
There he was, in the studio. And I looked through the glass from the ops room next to it, and it was like seeing a mad little elf who'd built his own kingdom. This was a complete one-man world, and he was completely in control of all of his material.
Excuse me, sir. Basement Billy, I just wants to know if you want any Revive 45.
Yes, what is it?
Basement Billy,
I know,
I
yeah.
just wants to know if you
Yeah.
want any Revive 45s.
Why?
Because I'm going down to the basement.
Oh,
in
good.
amongst the filth and the muck.
Oh.
To dig you some out.
Oh, God.
Right?
Just amazing, absolutely. Production-wise, just immense.
Turn on the radio every day.
And the best thing about it is he doesn't have like 18 people editing it for him or anyone else to do it. He's sitting in his little studio making this shit that's brilliant.
247 is where you'll see music and laughter, BBC. So when you're down and feeling awfully low, here's what you do to make your blues just go.
Da-da-dee, da-da-da-da-da-dee. Because he had a great command of that kind of music. Because he was into classical music as well. Not a lot of people knew that. He's a choir boy, apprentice priest, you know. And that technical side was what blew everybody sideways.
I like to play on the record machine.
I've never met anybody else like that from the broadcasting side who was as big in rock and roll as the rock and roll stars. You know, they were just presumed to be part of it by the stars.
What an amazing, cool dude. He was mates with Freddie Mercury, right, who was brilliant, and quite pally, it's fair to say, with this little band called the Beatles.
In 1966, I was requested by the pirate radio station I worked for would I please go to America following the Beatles around, recording comments and little interviews with them. It was a huge thrill, and we became good friends because we were all from Liverpool, so we knew what was what and had the same silly accent.
So, Kenny, how are you going?
Oh, it's wonderful. I got told that you don't actually come in here with the idea of doing an album, it just sort of falls out of one of the sessions.
Well, we have a vague idea, you know, Ken?
Yes.
As I was only saying the other day, we had a vague idea, but very vague. Also, very vague. Just a bit of laughter, ladies and gentlephones.
Just hearing Kenny Everett and John and Paul just chatting about making records and music is delightful. You can just sit and listen to it for ages.
You've been to India, haven't you?
Kenny Everett, MBE.
So that's what India taught you?
Exactly.
Did you come back with anything incredibly fantastic?
Yes.
Or was it just a little
beard?
Yeah.
Oh, he was obsessed with John Lennon. I think the first time I met him, he told me he fancied John Lennon.
I was invited to hear Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by George Harrison in his house one day when they'd just made it. And he sat me down in front of the speakers and said, "What do you think of this, Ken? Put the needle on the acetate." And I just was blown into the wall by this gorgeous music. He said, "Do you think we ought to release it, Ken?" I said, "Yes, I think you ought to, George."
Okay, Kenny, what are you doing?
Well, at the moment, I'm having a daily show come on soon.
Really?
Yeah.
So they haven't sacked you? I was getting a job with the Isle of Man.
And then suddenly, I was stopped in my tracks. He was easily the most innovative DJ of his generation. But with Kenny, innovation went hand in hand with termination.
The great king. So much for being a pioneer.
Good evening. Amongst Kenny's many talents was an ability to court controversy on a regular basis.
A rude fool.
A trait which tended to go down badly with his various employers.
I'm standing here in the corridors of power.
He had problems with some of the suits in various places where he worked, but I think genuinely they just weren't on his wavelength. I mean, they liked the ratings, and they liked the sound of it, but I think a lot of them generally actually just didn't understand what the hell Everett was up to, and probably how good he was.
His most high-profile sacking was from Radio 1 in 1970.
And it's 10:30. Off you go, Roger.
It wasn't the first, and it wouldn't be his last, but it was his most memorable.
Finally, Mrs. Mary Peyton, wife of the Transport Minister, has passed her advanced driver's test first time. That's the news.
Shelley passed because she crammed a fiver in his hand. I know these people.
The Ministry of Transport's wife passes a driving test. Oh, maybe she bunged him a fiver. It's a clever joke. And I'm sure he wasn't the only person who thought that when he read the story in the paper.
The man rang me up, the general director of programmes or something, and he said, "Kenny, it's time for the parting of the ways."
You were sacked from every organisation you ever joined.
BBC sacked him 3 times, I think.
It was just daft. It was just silly and irreverent and sort of upset the status quo.
But the constant sackings never seemed to do Kenny any lasting harm. If anything, it simply enhanced his career.
In the whole round world, there's only one number one.
In 1975, Kenny was in the Sunday Times book of the makers of the 20th century. He was the most celebrated DJ in the country. He was rich, he had many famous friends, and he was married to a glamorous, exciting woman. But inside, he was falling apart.
You know, plebs, there's often real pain behind a happy mask of comedy.
In May 1975, Kenny attempted suicide.
I mean, there are depressing moments in life where you think, oh, God, it's just too much. I really felt silly about that.
Probably the best luger in the world.
With Kenny, it was apparent. He was the unhappiest man I've ever met in my life.
Behind the comic facade, indeed possibly the driving force of his genius, was his own unhappiness with his homosexuality, exacerbated by his strict Catholic upbringing.
Well, I was brought up a Catholic in the true way, and you'd think that it was a huge sin. I thought, I'm going to go to hell forever. And hell is unimaginable agony forever.
If there's anyone in doubt,
Kenny had tried to deny his sexuality most of his life.
give me the moonlight, give me the girl.
He'd met the 60s socialite Lee Middleton at a Beatles party and married her in 1969. He was 21, she was nearly 8 years his senior and aware of his sexual confusion. The marriage, bizarre though it was to everyone who knew them, lasted until 1983.
I thought maybe if I married this jolly lady, with whom I was great friends, I thought maybe one day I'd wake up and look at her and it would snap. And I'd think, oh, I get it. You know, the shape and the lumps and the softness and everything, and suddenly it would all fall into place.
Did the earth move for you, darling?
Well, so-so.
Well, let's try again.
But I realized a lot later that you are what you're born. If you're born gay, then you're gay forever.
The problem about him being gay, I think, was he thought he was bringing shame on his family. And he was concerned that it was going to damage the BBC, damage his radio career. He really was worried that people were going to turn against him.
When the inevitable happened and Kenny was outed by a tabloid newspaper in 1985, the private Kenny was in anguish. But, ambushed by the press on his own doorstep, he faced them with typical Everett panache, introducing them to the 2 men in his life.
Well, Kenny came out of the door and said, I'm living with 2 husbands. So instead of sort of thinking, oh, please just go away and let it all die down like most people would, he was saying, actually, I'm twice as gay as you think I am.
A treasure, Kenny. He taught me how to be an adult. That sounds ridiculous, Kenny Everett teaching you to be an adult. But there's a thing about tolerance. Not just about tolerance of his gayness, but there's a sort of tolerance of everybody who's in any way rebellious.
In many ways, Kenny's public outing came as a relief. He'd been divorced for some years, and he embraced his newfound freedom with typical energy and enthusiasm.
went mad. But he was always mad all the time. It was bad. And that's what you loved about him.
When I first knew Kenny, I didn't really drink. He taught me how to drink. I'm terribly good at it.
Kenny could go on all day, all night, the next day, the next night. You could drop in and drop out from one week to the next at a party or a club with Kenny, and he'd have been going non-stop.
The Kenny Everett television show continued to attract fantastic ratings throughout the 1980s.
Look at those legs!
But Kenny was getting tired of the merry-go-round of wigs and frocks and TV paraphernalia.
He liked doing it, but he didn't like the glue. He didn't like the wigs and the glued bits. And he didn't like having to do something twice.
Okay, we'll do it again! Let's start from too many cooks spoil the broth! Too many cooks spoil the broth.
388-1255.
Hello?
Kenny returned to his first love, hosting a variety of shows for London's Capital Radio. But a year later came the news that he was HIV positive.
I remember when the story broke about him being HIV, he said, so many people have been so nice. He said, I didn't realise how many friends I had.
I got it. 3 hugs in the street this morning. Yeah. I must do this more often.
Even when the guy was dying, I mean, he was still far more positive than I'd be. You know, a lot of us would do that sort of curling up in a corner and why me, whatever. And Kenny just went, I doom, darlings.
Kenny had contracted the AIDS virus from his one-time partner, Nikolai, who it's thought had also infected Kenny's great friend, Freddie Mercury. Witnessing Freddie's gradual decline had a huge impact on Kenny.
I'm going slightly mad.
When Freddie was close to the end, I remember Freddie coming round with the video of I'm Going Slightly Mad. The song was all about the effect his HIV/AIDS was having on him. And Kenny had exactly the same strain of HIV/AIDS. So he could see what was happening with Freddie and how Freddie started to lose a bit of his coordination and things like that. That would happen to him. In the end.
Well, I think he put a brave face on it, but the truth is that, I think he found it very challenging and at times, scary and very upsetting.
I think if I got a cold and it would, dear God, just please make it fast. I think it's the lingering that goes with this is the awful bit.
I wanted to give him my insides. I would sit with him and I'd think, how can't I give you everything I have? How can't I give you my lungs, my liver and my kidneys and make you better? How can I sit so close to you? How can't I help you? And I it was hard.
Kenny lost his battle with AIDS on the 4th of April, 1995. Aged just 50.
If I ever do die, I think as I'm hoiked aloft in a ray of God's lovely sunbeam, I think I'd like this to be on the gramophone as I go, because it's just the most beautiful record I've ever heard.
My God! I'm dead!
For one anarchic decade on TV, Kenny Everett gave the entertainment industry a much-needed burst of dangerous energy.
He was the best operator on British television, of that there's no doubt. I mean, he was as significant then as, say, Gervais is today.
Yes, me, Kenny Machismo Charisma Everett.
J.B. Priestley, the great man, had a theory that all great comedians, and as I say, Ed wasn't a comedian, it's Kenny Everett, they are from another planet, they're Martians. Which is a heavy theory, but when you look at the really great people like Tommy Cooper, Eric Morecambe, and Kenny Everett, you think, yeah, when did you land?
If someone said to me, put the 5 comedy names forward for the title genius, I would put his name down, along with Morecambe, along with Tony Hancock.
It's difficult to define genius, of course, but it seems that there was an energy about him, a divine spark of mischief that consumed his life that was unique to him. In particular, the fact that there's no one directly in his lineage suggests that there was something special about him. The rate that he worked, his desire to innovate seems to conform to the notion of genius as we understand it. So yeah, he made like a lot of people laugh. Alas, not himself. Again, another quality of genius.
Hey, who was that creep? Hello, my little button mushrooms.
Kenny's influence can still be seen in many of today's top comedy performers, but his anarchic presence on both radio and television will never be matched.
There's only ever be one Kenny. Only ever one Kenny.
I don't think there'll be another Kenny Everett, and I don't think there's supposed to be. These guys come in ones, you know. They're solo units. They come into your life and you go out, and people always say, oh, how are we going to replace them? You don't replace them. You count yourself grateful you saw it when it was there. And if you were dead jammy, you actually got to stand beside it when it was working.
Da 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 da. Dance, dance, dance.